No matter what you are into outside of photography, there are always parallels which appear, connecting the creative life to all else. The steady cadence while cycling is much the same as a slow progression toward large goals. And the pure pressure a musician feels, which leads to unfortunate mental breakdowns, can be felt by all who deal with life's ups and downs. Even finding out that the solution to a problem which has plagued you for almost a decade is a simple one can help open our eyes toward novel realizations in our creativity. Let's dive right into this, shall we? I don't know. I'm still battling this sickness a little bit here and there.
That's right.
It's cold.
Now we're recording this just like a couple days between episodes. So to other people, it'll seem like it's been like, oh, it's been a whole nother week and there's been no real change, but it's been 2 days.
Yeah, it's been 2 days. 2 days. So, I mean, I definitely feel like better overall than I did in terms of like my throat and all of that. It's just like runny nose kind of situation that it's just bugging me.
Yeah.
But overall, definitely feel better than I did. So at least there's that.
That's good. Is it starting to feel like fall out there at all yet?
No. The past few days have been like high 90s, high humidity. Just, it's like summer's coming back with a vengeance. It's like, oh, now you're coming through here and now you actually want to act like summer.
Yeah.
It's August, or it's September actually, and it's acting like it should be in August. But
yeah, because I mean, we're already getting that feeling of fall here, which is nice. I mean, like there's a kind of a cool breeze in the evening. Just you can tell the light is shifting, the angle is a little lower. We have these two sliding glass doors that go out onto this deck, and it's south facing. And in this time of year, we get a little more sunlight in the house. So like the cats will just be like laying on the floor, soaking in all the sunlight. So they're loving that. But I definitely had the feeling that fall's in the air. But it's unfortunate that you haven't quite gotten that yet. But I'm sure it'll flip over at some point here.
Yeah, I'm waiting for it. I'm looking forward to it. I mean, I haven't been able to get out much the past few days, past 2 weeks, I would say, in terms of getting out into the woods. But I'm hoping either this weekend or next weekend, or next week, I should say, I'll be able to get out and try some new things out. I just received in a 90 millimeter macro lens that I had purchased.
Oh, nice.
For the Sony. And then I just bought a new tripod head as well that I'm looking forward to trying out.
What would you end up getting?
So I got the Leo Photo G4. It's a geared head.
Nice.
It's kind of like, I know Alex Noriega uses it and he helped me out. Mm-hmm. He uses it. He praises it. I just know that they can't sell it on their website in the US because of Arca Swiss and some like the liability.
Suspiciously similar to the Arca Swiss
I think,
D4, I believe, head.
Yeah, I think there's some legal things that they're like not able to sell in the US because of. But from the very little that I've played around with it in the house and just trying it out, it's beautiful. It looks good. All the geared movements feel great. So I'm very much so looking forward to playing around with that. And it's a big switch from a ball head, though.
Yeah, I think you'll get used to it pretty fast, and I think that is one of the things that will help you with the digital to approach things a little bit more like with large format. Just because it's one more thing that forces you to slow down a little bit. I've worked with ball heads through the years. I still use a ball head on the backpacking trips just from a weight and a bulk standpoint. But once you start working with a geared head, man, it is so nice to have that precision control and things stay where you leave it. You don't have to mess with anything.
Yeah.
It is very, very nice to have. So I think you'll certainly enjoy that when you've had a chance to put it through its paces out in the field.
Yeah, and I couldn't beat the price on it. I mean, compared to Arca Swiss especially, I think I got it for under $400.
And I don't know how much the Arca Swiss is. I know it's a lot. But I don't know. Now, what your thoughts are on stuff like that where, I mean, it is pretty much just a blatant knockoff of the Arca Swiss. What are your thoughts on that sort of thing? For you, is it all about the price, or do you have any value in supporting a company that innovated and created that design to begin with. I know you're at a different place with your photography than I am, where, things that are very expensive are, even more expensive, where you are right now with your photography. But do you see any value in trying to support the original creators of stuff, or is that just not even an issue?
Well, the Arca Swiss D4, which I guess is the closest comparative to the G4 from Leofoto, it's about $1,200 on B&H right now. So you're talking 3 times the cost. So for me, as much as I would love to have Arca Swiss and have like that name brand and support, like you were saying, the innovators of that tripod head or whatever, I can kind of be mixed between things. Like, especially right now, I just need to go with what is within my budget for everything. Yeah. I can't, for me to spend $1,200 on a tripod head it's just insane for me. Like, that's more than I make in a month right now. So it's not feasible. But in the future, that might change. But at the same time, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, it's one of those things. And I would imagine part of the price differences has to do with the manufacturing. Because, I mean, all the Arca Swiss stuff, I mean, it's basically a pretty small family owned company kind of operation where things are in smaller batches, smaller numbers. And I'm guessing that the one you have is made in China in much larger quantity,
I'm sure.
Which is one of the reasons why things can be less expensive. But I mean, when I was in your shoes, I mean, I would have made the exact same decision, because I mean, money is certainly a factor in those sort of situations. In time, I've sort of changed my approach a little bit, just from the standpoint of, I love to see innovation. I love to see companies come out with this sort of stuff, but you certainly pay a very hefty price. In this case, you'd be paying 3 times as much. You'd pay a very hefty price in order to support that sort of innovation. But it's good that we have options. And I think that's one of the things that it comes down to.
I mean, you could say the similar thing about lenses. And if you have a Sony camera, then some people may only buy Sony lenses versus buying the Voigtlanders or other brands that might be smaller and more expensive, or bigger corporations and less expensive than what the Sonys would be. So, I mean, at the end of the day, what works, at least how I see it. So, I mean, feeds into competition. And I guess in a sense, at least it's a very stereotypical and probably old school thought, but having that competition in the marketplace can, at times at least, help feed innovation further. Like, if you have that competition, you have to really prove your worth and show why you are worth that price, that higher price point than what others are. So
it's just, one of those things that comes up from time to time. But I look forward to seeing how how the experience of working with that goes for you in the field, especially with the macro stuff. I think that'll be pretty interesting, because I would think that doing macro with a ball head would have been an exercise of frustration. But having the geared setup, and I've never really done any macro. I see how that could definitely be beneficial for some of this stuff. So that'll be very cool. I was
playing around with that lens when it came in, just a little bit, mainly handheld last night, and just trying to see, because I've never played with macro, especially 1-to-1 before. And man, that is a totally different world. That's going to open up so many different possibilities. Just because I took a photograph, or I didn't actually take the photograph, but I composed everything up of one of the little cactus plants that I have. And this thing's no bigger than no taller than my pinky. And the little, I was able to get the little, what do you call it? Their spikes. Their little spikes were super large in the frame and super sharp. And it was just, and then doing the same thing with a sage leaf and being able to see that so much bigger on this LCD than usual it's crazy.
Now, the other thing I was thinking is, since you're going to be doing a fair amount of close-up stuff, and you're still going to be working in black and white, I don't really see a heck of a lot of close-up black and white work. So I think that'll be interesting to see how that all evolves as you work with it. Most of the close-up stuff I see is all color, but also a lot of times the pictures are using the color to build depth.
Right.
So I think it'll be interesting to see how that changes your approach. So that'll be
I'll
cool.
be taking a lot of inspiration from Sarah Marino. I have to go through and look at some of her ebooks that she has available, and because she does a lot with black and white and obviously her plant photographs and all of that. I've already told her outrightly, I'm like, I'm going to be using you as an inspiration point for all of this when I start doing macro work and start playing with digital more, just because she's the only one that I know of that does a lot of black and white close-up work. I mean, of course she does the color, but still.
And it seems like because she has a separate account for black and white. So it'll also be interesting because now you're also jumping back into the world of social media.
Yeah.
And it'll be interesting because I believe that she had said that the black and white stuff doesn't gather the same sort of audience as the color work. And it'll be interesting to see how that also works for you. Whether you're sharing stuff on Instagram or other things along those lines, and whether it's just the feeling that, why are people maybe not drawn to this as much if it's just because it's black and white, because I know that people have had some struggles along those lines when posting work in black and white. So
yeah, I think that was one of the big reasons why I had a tendency to get so down on myself about being on social media, because like you see all of this color work, these grand scenes that are getting a bunch of attention, and even some of these smaller scenes that are utilizing that depth to gain, or depth of color, just to get a lot of traction on things, a lot of attention. And then you're posting your work and it's like, well, it's black and white. It's not really all that eye-catching. It takes longer to contemplate and to look at, and it's not getting nearly as many views or comments or whatever.
Yeah.
So that's something that I'm going to have to navigate as well, as I think more about this.
Yeah.
Just how am I going to deal with that? And it's just going to have to be one of those things of, okay, I'm going to post this. I'm going to just see what happens and whatever. Post it, get off of social media for the day or however long, and not worry about it. So,
yeah. Because I would also think that in general, close-up macro sort of stuff probably doesn't fare as well, doesn't, grab as much attention. And then when you combine that with black and white, it's probably just kind of a recipe of kind of like, putting out stuff out there that's not going to, instantly grab a ton of attention. But maybe that's also not such a bad thing, because then it would allow you to work without having as much of a spotlight. So I could see that being perhaps a good thing. I think it was on Netflix. My wife and I, the other day, we watched a documentary on Louis Capaldi. Have you seen that on Netflix?
No, I haven't.
Are you familiar with him or his music at all?
Very little bit.
Okay. Do you know where he's from? Do you know anything about him at all?
No.
Okay. It'll be spoilers alert here, because I had heard some of his songs, but I knew nothing about him. And watching the documentary on Netflix was really fascinating. The voice that he has does not match his appearance or what you would think, because he has this very soulful voice, very rich, soulful voice. But he is Scottish, and he doesn't really take himself super seriously. And it was absolutely fascinating, because he had been working for basically all of his life on his music and just honing his craft. And then suddenly he kind of shoots into the spotlight. And in the documentary, he talks about how much of a challenge that was, in a way where all of a sudden you have this massive amount of pressure put on you. And, when you finally get to the point where, when he finally got to the point where he made it, he had these songs that are, setting records and all kinds of stuff. Then all of a sudden there's this extra pressure to put out the next one and the next one. So it got me thinking a little bit about that. And he started basically having these breakdowns, and it turns out he just had Tourette's, but he didn't know it.
Okay.
But like having like twitching and all kinds of stuff, but absolutely fascinating to watch. And it gives this peek behind the scenes of what that sort of environment is. And I guess he even at one point brought in all these people to help him write these songs and stuff, and found it just wasn't really working for him. And he just did best creating the stuff more so on his own, as well as maybe with some close friends and stuff like that. But a very, very good watch. I'd highly recommend it. And it's just one of those things where the voice does not match isn't matching what you have in your head. It is really, really fascinating.
Yeah, that whole having a breakdown over like the pressure of everything and pressure of constantly putting things out is something that reminds me of with Bo Burnham.
I'm not familiar with him. Who's he?
So Bo Burnham is he started off on YouTube back in I think real early days, and he was doing like comedy kind of songs, comedy singer songwriter kind of deal. And so he eventually started to gain a lot of popularity, went on to stage, went on through tours and all of that. And in 2016, it all came to a head where he was performing and he'd just break down and have these massive anxiety, massive panic attacks that he just couldn't deal with anymore. And so he just called it quits, and he had no plans on turning or going back to that life. He instead started like directing movies and trying out different creative avenues and all of that. And then in 2020 was when he came back to doing all of it. And there's on Netflix, there's his documentary that he did called Inside, I think. Mm-hmm. Which of course blew him back up into popularity. And
be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, exactly. He did that and took off again, just like he had before. And I don't know exactly what he's doing in terms of if he's going out and performing still or anything like that, or trying to get back into that a little bit. But it's just one of those things that like you get to a certain point in your career where everybody really wants to be popular and successful and like super famous. But then you hear about all these people who get to that point and then they get so anxious. They get so much just pressure around them that they break. And then they wish that they never had it in the first place. Yeah,
because it's not just the personal pressure of, being creative on demand and coming up with these songs that everyone, that need to, I don't know the word I'm looking for, but basically creating music that other people will embrace and to appreciate and love. But then you also end up having all these people kind of working, not necessarily for you, but like working under you from the standpoint of, touring and this and that. And you end up having this huge setup. And I can't imagine how stressful that must be. I know some people thrive on that. It's definitely not the sort of, I'm not built for that kind of thing. I'll put it that way. But
no, I couldn't imagine.
Yeah, it is pretty crazy. And it actually got me thinking a little bit about how. So I went cycling yesterday, and I decided I'm going to head down to the coast, which I live in San Diego, which is it's on the coast, and people think, oh, I'm probably 3 feet from the beach. I probably am a surfer. I haven't been to the beach this year. I haven't been to the beach in 3 years. It's in order for me to cycle to the coast, it was about 46 miles round trip. And I was just kind of curious to try out some new paths and stuff. But my dad, he was really into cycling, like really, really into cycling. And so he's been telling me some stuff in terms of, some advice and stuff and some tips. And one of the things that he said is to try to keep the cadence to around 80. So that's how many basically revolutions per minute. So, which ends up being basically just like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's kind of pedaling pretty fast.
Okay.
And so keeping the cadence at about 80, whether you're climbing, whether you're going straight, whether you're going up a hill, if you can keep it steady, then it kind of makes things easier. It's a bit more efficient. It's using your muscles differently. But it was kind of interesting because it made me think a little bit from a photography standpoint, where you're just kind of constantly working. There might be hills that are going up, there might be hills that are going down, but you're kind of keeping that work steady. And so, and then it got me thinking a little bit about the whole thing with Lewis Capaldi, where, you're thrust into this spotlight where you have all this pressure, but at the same time, it seems like if you go through life just constantly working away and at a relatively steady rate, there'll be uphills, there'll be downhills. But if you keep the effort relatively steady, then you're not necessarily going to burn out necessarily. You're going to maintain that amount of energy. And I was thinking about how that relates to a long-term approach when it comes to photography, when it comes to career. Because otherwise, you hit the first challenge and you just burn yourself out, and then you got nothing left, which, makes me think a little bit about the, just the way everything is online, where so many people are trying to get some degree of, instant going viral or fame or building up the numbers, and how just a not slow, but a steady approach is one that will give long-term gains. And so that's something I can relate to. And so I thought that was kind of an interesting little correlation there.
Yeah, I think it's also important to think about, like, you see all of these overnight successes, and of course we've talked about like the reality of overnight success, that it doesn't exist, that it's, yeah. But at the same time, you see a lot of these overnight successes that have one viral video, one viral song, whatever. And then it's like, maybe they'll put out another album or something later on down the line, and then they're done. And that's it. Because there was no slow build up to learn what you actually want from everything and your own artistic voice. You didn't give yourself enough time to learn everything. I mean, when it comes to singing, like artists in that vein, keeping with that, like you look at some of the most long-standing artists in the world, and they're the ones with the most eclectic discography. They're the ones who change their sounds and continue evolving over the years that they're there, because that's what keeps them relevant. That's what keeps them excited to continue doing what they're doing. I mean, the ones who just keep with the same consistent sound throughout their entire career, they're pretty short-lived for the most part.
And also, there's another thing that happened recently. So my wife and I, we moved into our house in 2014. So it's 9 years. And so we have an air conditioner, and there's the air intake is located in the hallway. And for almost the entire time we've been here, when the AC's on, it starts making this like buzzing sound. And I always thought it was because one of the screws for kind of the metal grate that's up on the ceiling, one of them was loose, and eventually I replaced it with another one, and that didn't do anything. But finally this past weekend, I'm like, I got to figure this out. I got to figure out why it's doing this, because you just turn it on, it's just then it shuts off, then it'll buzz again. So it wasn't like continuous. And so I'm up on the ladder. I have the AC on, and I'm just kind of like pushing in different areas to see if like the sheet metal is vibrating, figuring out what's going on. I'm, toying with the air filter that's up in there and working with everything. And eventually I kind of start troubleshooting this. And what I find is that up in the intake, in the ceiling, I was feeling around in there, and there were two areas that were a little bit warmer than others. So I can tell that there was like a little bit of a kind of a gap in the ducting. And so I just put a little tape in those areas to cover them up, because I guess what was happening is like some air was coming in through there, and then it was like causing it to like reverberate and this and that. But 2 pieces of tape on those areas, and now it doesn't do it anymore after 9 years. So that got me thinking that, if there's some like nagging thing that's going on, if there's something that you've been putting off, sometimes it takes very little effort to figure out what's going on and to fix it. And now we have a perfectly quiet air conditioner because it took probably 5 minutes or less in order to troubleshoot it, put a little piece of tape there. And so perhaps there's a lesson to be learned when it comes to photography or whatever it is. If there's something that you've been putting off, chances are there's a simple solution. It just takes a little bit of effort. And then you can not have a buzzing sound as you're trying to watch Netflix. So that was another little thing that happened this past weekend.
I don't know if that would make me really happy to have figured out that simple solution, or just really irritate me that I hadn't figured it out sooner after all that time. Like,
yeah, it's just one of those little things. So I think there's probably a life lesson buried somewhere in there about that thing that people have been putting off or whatever it is along those lines. So that worked out pretty well. And then the other thing is, a little while back, my wife surprised me for my birthday and got me a new computer, which is pretty awesome. So I'd been using a iMac, and I think I had it since like 2018 or so. And so she bought me one of the new Mac Studios with the studio monitor, and it's a pretty awesome setup. And I didn't really have any complaints about the speed of my old one, but the idea was that she's basically taking my old computer so that she can have a computer, and then I'm getting this nice fancy one. But the keyboard that came with this new computer has the number pad on the right, which is really nice and convenient. The previous one I had didn't have that.
Yeah, I missed that when it comes to my laptop. Since switching over from a PC to the MacBook Air that I have, it doesn't have the num keys on the side. And I'm like, I miss them when I need them, but otherwise I'm fine.
And it's one of those things where I had gone so long without having those number keys, but now, especially after doing the pre-orders, launching the pre-orders for the portfolios and the zines, so I'm entering stuff into QuickBooks and typing in numbers and stuff, it obviously is way easier with that. And she also got me the trackpad because she said, I had a choice between the trackpad and the mouse. And, I figure, you could use the mouse if you wanted to, or the trackpad. But now with the keyboard that has, all the numbers in the middle, all the numbers, has all the regular
what a
letters.
Weird setup that would be.
just type in numbers all day. There's letters off to the side.
Yeah, really.
But it has like the standard keyboard off to the left, the numbers to the right. But now I have the trackpad. And if I want to have the trackpad with my right hand, it's going to be like way off to the right. And so I decided I'm going to retrain myself. I'm going to have the trackpad off to the left. I'm going to have then the regular keyboard is centered with the monitor, then the number pads off to the right. So I'm going to have to retrain myself to use the trackpad with my left hand, because it was partially an aesthetic thing, partially a functional thing, because now the trackpad on the left, the keyboard on the right, it matches like with the size of the monitor. So aesthetically, it's better. But functionally, it took a little getting used to. But I've actually quite embraced this, because now I can do numbers on the right, trackpad on the left, letters in the middle. And so it's like this perfect blend of functional combined with aesthetics. It's taken a little getting used to. And I don't know if other people do this as well with the trackpad on the left, because I'm not left-handed. But it's just another one of those things where it takes that little bit of training, a little bit of, relearning things. But sometimes, just like with fixing the AC duct, sometimes it's just that little hurdle to overcome, and then things get way easier in the long run with that kind of long-term approach.
Yeah, when I switched over to the MacBook, I actually found myself using the trackpad a lot more than I ever used the mouse. And I don't know exactly why it is. Maybe it's just, it's not like I went from a desktop to a laptop or anything. So, but still, I have my mouse aside of me to the right all the time. But I think just that convenience of being able to go quick from moving around on the screen to typing something in to back, because of where it's situated in the middle there. Yeah. But I'm sure once I get a desktop set up, then I'll have to retrain myself and figure all of that out, how I want to do everything with. Yeah. Regardless how I have it.
Have you used the trackpad for any image editing or anything like that?
Yeah. for the most part, I do all the podcast editing with a trackpad. And I think most of my image editing is with the trackpad, unless I have to do any kind of like spot cleanup or anything like that.
Yeah. Oh, the mailman's here. I have all the barking in the background now.
Yep.
In case people wonder what a small dog sounds like when it barks. There you go.
Yeah, lovely.
Yeah. So what other things do you have going on? Any projects coming up? Anything else in the works?
No, I mean, I've pretty much finished up the layouts as much as I can right now for Nature Vision magazine. So that is all set up. I'm just waiting on, I have an interview with someone that I'm just waiting to get the answers back from. I have another interview that's going into it that is being edited right now before I put it into the magazine. What else do I got going on? I've been working a little bit on a article that's going to go into that magazine as well about community and connection.
Mm-hmm.
So I finally started writing towards that after far too long of pushing it off. Talk about simple solutions of just actually doing the thing that you want to do.
Yeah, it's that initial hurdle of just sitting down and starting it, which is hard to do.
Yeah. I mean, my girlfriend was asking me last night. She's like, "Oh, so what do you have planned for today?" And I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I'm like, I have this recording with Ben, and then I have the interview over at LL Bean tonight.
Oh, nice.
And after that, I'm like, but in the morning, I'm like, I have nothing to do. So I was like, I guess maybe I'll try and write some. And she was like, yeah, that's probably a good idea to get that done.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. So, but it's amazing because it's just one of those things of like, I sat down with a physical pen and paper and just started to write, and just like I have a basic sense of direction, what I want to talk about, basic idea of where I want this article to go. But at the end of the day, I was just like writing about my trip to Colorado. And that's really like that at the surface of it is what it is. And one of the lessons that I learned out there and some of the things that I was thinking about, and it's coming together. It's just slowly chipping away at it instead of trying to sit down and force myself to put everything out there at once.
Yeah.
Because I've found already that the first page and a half of what I've written probably isn't going to be in the final article anyway.
Yeah,
it's
but
just a matter of getting to that point.
Exactly. Gets the process going, kind of gets the gears moving. Are you planning on writing articles on a regular basis for the magazine?
See, I feel weird about that. Like, I'm the editor of it already. Like, so I feel really weird about putting my work in there, even though the rest of the team still has to agree that it fits, that it works, that it's appropriate for it. It's still like our copy editor doesn't have like a ton of say over what goes in or what doesn't. And so it's between David and I, and it's kind of like, I don't want people to look at it and be like, oh, he's just in this magazine, not because his work is good, but because he's the editor and he can put whatever he wants into it.
Yeah.
Like, so I figure like, that's why with this, as I'm laying everything out, like I don't have my name attributed in the front cover of the magazine. I'm not putting it like, I'm not throwing myself into everybody's face. Like, you'll see my article, it's towards the end, and that's that.
Yeah.
That's how I plan on doing it in the future, but I'll probably be writing an article for the magazine, maybe twice a year. So probably the fall and spring editions, and see how that goes. Just because I can.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
So
I mean, I could totally relate to that, because I mean it does seem like a difficult place to be in from the standpoint of, yes, it'd be good to have some articles in there, but at the same time, it's like being like the I don't know. I see how there's a little bit of a feeling of conflict there.
Yeah. Like, at the end of the day, if we have, because we're typically sticking around 15 to 16 pieces of content within the magazine itself for each issue. So if 1 month or one issue we have that's 16 without me being in there, and it's a spring issue, and I have an article already planned for it, I'll just take my article out, like whatever.
Yeah.
And if it comes along where that next issue we are low on content, we don't have an extra article or something, whatever, then I'll throw it in and just do it that way. More as like a filler piece than anything else. But yeah, I still feel weird about that. Even me putting it in for this fall issue is like, I don't know, is it too early for me to do that? Is it like appropriate for me to do that? There's a lot of questions around it, but I mean, obviously David and the team are good with me doing it, so it's not a huge deal, but still.
Yeah. I definitely see how that could be the case. With fall coming up here, any plans for any particular type of photography or anything in the works?
Just playing around with the macro and with the Sony, learning that system and seeing how things go. I mean, I would like to get out for a trip or two in an ideal world, but realistically, it's probably not going to happen just because of trying to figure out job situation, trying to figure out everything else going on in my life right now.
Yeah.
So just kind of keeping it local like I usually do. Probably go up to the mountains, maybe do a week-long trip up the mountains or something, or a long weekend up there and play around with the more intimate scenes that I haven't been able to before.
Yeah.
Keep it like that.
Yeah, it's crazy because we're recording this first end of the first week of September. And it's crazy to think that a month from now, I'll be not too far away from my trip to Zion. And I have a fair amount of work to do between now and then, but it's not, I mean, I got plenty of time to get all that done. And then my wife and I were going to head up to the Eastern Sierra on a camping trip, just a few days, and time it with, decent fall color up there. And we'll may possibly bring Oliver the dog as well, because it's a very dog friendly area. But it's just crazy to think that is just right around the corner. And I, just like last year, when I went up there on a solo trip, I didn't bring my camera. It was just to hike some trails, get to know the area, and get a feel for the lay of the land. But now it'll be nice to head back there with my wife at, when there's beautiful fall color everywhere and hopefully some decent weather. But it's just crazy to think that is not that far away. And then it'll be time to head to Zion and spend some time there as well. So just as we were talking about kind of at the beginning of the episode where, there's that sense of fall in the air here, maybe not so much there. But man, I love this time of year. I think it's because it is so very fleeting, where it can feel like summer, one day, and then it's just like a switch gets flipped. It feels like fall, and then it just seems like it's over in a blink of an eye. And so, man, I'm just really looking forward to that. And I don't usually, when I go on a trip, there's a particular subject I've been trying to photograph for a while or something along those lines. And when it comes to Zion this year, I don't really have any particular scenes or subjects that I've just been, waiting on or hoping to photograph there. And so I'm hoping that will, I hope it'll allow me to go into the trip with very little in the way of expectations, and just get out there to experience it. The trips to Zion are always rather mellow trips, just because there's all the comforts of home nearby. It's not like a backpacking trip where I'm off in the middle of nowhere and, swatting at mosquitoes. But it's just, man, I just love it there. And it would be great if I can find a way of bringing my road bike there as well. It would be a lot of stuff to bring along and find a way to secure it in my car and stuff. But man, I'm just really looking forward to that. It's just such a special time of year.
Yeah. Now, if you bring your road bike with you, how does that change things for you?
So basically, I have to bring two bikes is what it comes down to. Because I have an old bike I got when I was in like the 6th grade. And I got a little trailer I can hook up to it. And that's one I can take into the main canyon of Zion. Because in Zion, there's the main canyon, which that time of year is shuttle only. And I really do not enjoy riding the shuttle. So instead, I can hop on my bike, take my large format kit in the backpack and toss that on the little trailer, and then, bike into the main canyon. And I have just a cable lock I run just kind of between the wheels and the frame of the bike, so that a person can't just get on it and like start riding it away. But I can just leave that bike kind of sitting on the roadside. No one's going to steal it. It's, but I would not do that with the road bike. The road bike is far nicer. So I would transport the kind of the old beater bike on a bike rack on the back of my 4Runner, but then I'd have to try to find a way of transporting the road bike on the inside and then also storing it there, but also I sleep there. So it's going to be a lot to juggle, but I will say it will be nice on some days to just not do photography and put on the colorful spandex that matches the maple leaves. And then just go biking up the main canyon, because there's some fun roads, and there's really, other than the shuttle buses that run every, 15 minutes or so, there's really no cars on the road. So you have these beautiful roads in this beautiful canyon and can just cruise around on the bike and enjoy it from that perspective. So it'd be a lot of work to figure out how to do that, but I'm going to figure out something to keep the bike safe and also to sleep in the back of the 4Runner. So I guess that's one of the other things I'll be doing in the weeks leading up to the trip is figuring out a way of doing that.
I'm also curious how that will affect your perception on productivity while you're out there.
That's true.
Because now if you plan on going out on the road bike, like you kind of have to play with your conditions there, with weather conditions and everything too, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Like, it's a real nice day for both photography and the road bike. Like, which one are you going to choose?
Yeah.
And how is it going to be more like towards the end of the trip, you're on the road bike more because you've already got the shots or you feel like you have? Or, I'm curious how that's going to play through.
That'll be a tough balance because, towards the end of the trip is when I'm usually running low on energy anyways. And so probably not an ideal time, though maybe it would force, maybe the reward of being able to hop on the bike and ride around would be a bit of an incentive to take it easy on a day or so and relax and wander a little bit, not push myself too hard so that I could rebuild the energy to do that more toward the end of the trip. The priority will certainly be photography. But I can see how if it's a little bit of an overcast day, for example, where it's not a productive day for photography, I can see being like, cool, hop on the bike, go have a ride. Weather will be better tomorrow for photography. So you're very right that there will be some decisions being made and some strategy involved on that one. But I think it'd be kind of a cool way to see things from a different perspective, and just to give that part of my brain that is focusing on photography, to give it a little bit of a rest so that I can, when I'm done with that on another day, I could see things with a fresh perspective again.
I hope you enjoyed our creative banter. You can learn more about Cody's work by visiting his website, codyschultz.com. And you can find my work at benhorn.com. For further discussion, join us at patreon.com/creativebanter. It's a place where we can interact with you, the listener. And although we greatly appreciate those who contribute by joining a tier, discussions are open to everyone, whether you're a paying member or not. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you around next time.